Hi everybody! So today we're going to be discussing the religious beliefs of people who lived in ancient Greece. So, unlike modern day religions, the Greeks actually did not have organized religious gatherings. So they didn't have a certain day or type of ritual that they would perform as a group, but they were required to do rituals and sacrifices. Now these were done in honor of the gods so that they would please their deities. The Greeks believed in many deities, which means that their religion was polytheistic, and they believed in more than one god. Remember, we talked about in class, a deity means a god or a goddess. And there were many gods and goddesses that were worshipped by the Greeks. But we will be covering the 13 most important god and goddesses that were worshipped in ancient Greece. Now, 12 of these deities were called the Olympians. And these were the 12 most important gods that were worshipped by the Greeks. They were called the Olympians because the Greeks believed that there was a kingdom on top of Mount Olympus where the gods lived, and each of these gods were worshipped for different reasons. Now, as we go along, I want you guys to consider the powers that each of the gods have and the realms of power that they controlled, and try to think about what that says about the culture of ancient Greece. So our first god was Zeus. He was one of the most important Olympians because he was king of all the gods. He was god of thunder and had control over the weather. He was a very powerful god, and the Greeks prayed to him so that they could have rain, good weather, in order for a good harvest. And because he was king of the gods, he was in charge of maintaining order and justice between humans on earth and among the gods on Olympus. His wife, Hera, was queen of the Olympians, and she was very important as well because she was the goddess of marriage and family. So she was in charge of maintaining peace and prosperity in families and marriages among humans on earth. Apollo was the god of music, poetry, and medicine. So he had quite a few responsibilities, and humans prayed to him quite often if they were sick and needed medicine, or if they were gifted in the arts and they needed assistance from Apollo. He was also very famous for his archery, so humans would often pray to him when they were hunting wild animals and wanted to make sure that they could make that shot. He was also associated with the sun, so the Greeks sometimes even considered him to be god of the sun. Apollo's twin sister Artemis was the goddess of hunting, wild animals, and fertility. Now, she stayed a virgin and an unmarried woman her entire life, so she was patron of young women, which means that the mortal women on earth would often pray to her or look to her for guidance during their lives. And like her brother, she was associated with the moon, so oftentimes mortals would pray to her as the sun goddess. The moon goddess. Hermes was a very tricky god, and you did not want to have him as your enemy because he was god of trade, thieves, and travel. So he would often pull pranks on the gods and mortals on earth, so you did not want to mess with him. He was in charge of travel, so traveling Greeks would often pray to him before a long journey and ask for guidance in their travels. And he was known to wear winged sandals and a helmet and fly around Earth delivering messages between the gods and for the gods to mortals. The beautiful temptress Aphrodite was the goddess of love, beauty, and desire. And she too was a troublemaker on Earth because she would often cause mortals to fall in love. She once even started a 10-year war because she made two enemies fall in love. And you probably know her son. His name was Eros. He would go around shooting mortals with love arrows and causing them to fall in love. but you probably know him by the name of Cupid. Hephaestus was the god of fire and metalwork, so he was very gifted at creating items out of metal. So he was the blacksmith of the gods on Mount Olympus. And he was known in Greek mythology and stories to create weapons out of metal for the gods and heroes like Hercules. Dionysus was one of the most unusual gods because he was actually born a mortal, but he, in his lifetime, created wine. So the gods found that very admirable and turned him into the god of wine, merriment, and theater. Because he was associated with wine, he was also known to make people go mad. If you got on his bad side, he would make you go crazy, but his followers were also known to be very excitable and always in a frenzy. Poseidon was a very important god as well because he was in charge of seas and rivers, and because of his power over water, he was able to create natural disasters with water like floods, storms, and earthquakes. So again, mortals did not want to mess with him. He received sacrifices from mortals when they were traveling overseas because they wanted to make sure that they had a safe voyage and the water was going to be clear. So he would receive lots of prayers from traveling merchants. Athena was the goddess of wisdom, war, and crafts, so she received many sacrifices and prayers from the Greeks before they went off to war. She was skilled with strategy and warfare, so the Greeks often asked for her wisdom and guidance in battle. She was very intelligent, so before war, during war, Greeks would often pray to her to ask for advice and to ensure that they had a successful battle. And she was also very important because she gave mortals the gifts of cooking and sewing, so they admired her greatly for that. And her counterpart, Ares, was also god of war. However, he was not often liked because he was very aggressive and angry, and he loved bloodlust and brutality in war. So Greeks did not often pray to him before war because he was, he had such a bad temper, and they often turned to level-headed Athena, who had better strategy skills than Ares did. Demeter was very important to the Greeks as well because she was goddess of farming and vegetation. The Greeks often sacrificed to Demeter during a harvest or when the seasons changed because she was associated with earth and growth, and she had lots of power over the earth, so you did not want to mess with her. She was often prayed to because, again, humans wanted successful harvests, they wanted fertile land, and one time she actually caused all of the crops in the world to die because her daughter was kidnapped. So you definitely did not want to forget to sacrifice to Demeter before the harvest came. Now, our final deity, his name was Hades, and he was the god of the underworld. So the underworld was a place underneath the earth where all of the souls of deceased mortals on earth would go after they died. And because of his ruling of the underworld, the Greeks were very afraid of him, and he was not considered an Olympian because he did not live on Mount Olympus. And he was the only god in all of Greece that did not live on Mount Olympus with the other gods. So I know that was a lot of information to throw at you guys. So now we're going to break into our groups and summarize a little bit about what we learned. Remember at the beginning I asked you to think about what the different powers of the gods said about the culture of ancient Greece. So let's reflect on that now. I want you guys to talk about, why do you think the Greeks believed in gods and goddesses with different responsibilities? Why did they have the responsibilities they did? Why were there so many different gods? And based on the different deities and their realms of power, what would you say were some of the most important aspects of Greek culture? Remember, the different gods say a lot about what was important to the Greeks, so I want you to talk about that as a group. And then after that, we are going to test your guys' knowledge on the powers of the different gods. So remember, we're going to break up into groups and then we will come back and test.